Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Comic Talk. It's just Pops today. We're going to run through some stories, probably pull up some reviews, kind of do a little catch up. I know I'm way behind. I haven't done a Comic Talk in a couple weeks. Had a lot of things going on in my personal life, but want to talk about some of the stuff going on with some of the creators like Alan Moore and Bill Willingham, catch up with some reviews, see what other kind of comic news is out there. And folks, make sure you hit those comments and let me know what you want me to talk about, what you want me to review, some of the things that are on your mind as far as comic books go. I've been revisiting my collection. I've sold off some things, been working through the formation of sort of like an online store, working on trying to grow and develop that part of the Pops verse, so to speak. So that part is also in the works and out there. So stay tuned for that. And let me know what kind of things you're interested or you're looking for. Maybe I'm able to help you, give you a hand tracking some of those things down. I know I've shipped off everything from Alien and Predator books to Deadpool to Spawn. I mean, all sorts of stuff. So, Batman and Detective both have sold all of those this last couple of weeks. So, it's been busy for me, and I look forward to doing more of that, hopefully with you guys. So, let me start with Alan Moore. Hmm, Alan Moore has always been a bit of a crazy, right? No real, no real talk. I always joke he kind of looks like the homeless guy in the first Hellraiser movie that eats bugs. I mean, he just kind of looks like that kind of guy, right? Who knows? Who knows? He's a millionaire comic book creator, but he dropped this news a couple weeks back about all of his future screen royalties. So notice the language in this is told DC Comics to donate his future screen royalties to Black Lives Matter. So I thought that was interesting because some of the reports implied that had to do with his royalties from his comic books, like it had to do with every time the Watchmen. Well, the Watchmen is by far uh, going to continue to sell to the end of time. Killing Joke, sell to the end of time. These kinds of things, right? So in the article, it talks about sharing royalties, now opting to have DC Comics send them to Black Lives Matter. So I will pull up this interview with Telegraph. We'll get to that. This lists off some of the things he's done. I mentioned Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Batman Killing Joke, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, amongst other things, and talks about his perspective on the state of comic books has changed now that he shares his royalties, in addition to talking about his thoughts on Miller's Dark Knight, that kind of thing. One thing for me, I was always struck by this was this concept that creators sort of like need to virtue signal. Oh, they won't let me. The article is behind a paywall, so let me pull up what I had here before. The Hollywood Reporter had it sort of. They had a link to the original source, which is fine. I'm not going behind the paywall, so I'm gonna pull that right back up for you guys, so you guys will have at least some of the quotes. We'll go through that a little bit. I just don't get the virtue signaling. I don't understand what he thinks he's accomplishing, why he thinks there'd be an ounce of goodwill. These people are vultures. They will turn on him in a moment's notice if they were to smell some blood in the water. So, quote, I no longer wish to be shared with them. So the shared royalties. I don't really feel with the recent films that they stood by what I assume were original principles. So I asked DC Comics to send all the money from any future TV series or films to Black Lives Matter, which to me, it's just like giving them free pass to not pay royalties or pay such a nominal amount. So I don't know how that will be negotiated and how that sort of will be handled through his agent as well as through his heirs. So anyway, we'll see. He talks about retiring from comics, listen to a quieter writer's life after quote finding at comic conventions. I'd like talk to people and they were looking at me like they were having some sort of religious experience rather than an ordinary conversation. Well, yeah, because you're a celebrity. So again, this is always one of those odd things. It doesn't surprise me coming from Alan Moore, but it always surprises me from these folks that they're surprised by the fandom or they're inconvenienced by the fandom. They want the customers, they want the accolades, they want people to appreciate their work. But when they do, it's too much for them. So don't put yourself in those situations. That's what you do, Alan. Um, he kind of attacks Frank Miller a little bit. The idea of one man, perhaps on a horseback, who can sort out this mess is a bit too Birth of a Nation. I just don't. I just don't care for Alan Moore throwing rocks. He's so jealous that Frank has had success simultaneous to his success. So therefore, um, And I will say that Frank, the adaptations of Sin City and his influence on Batman and things like that have adapted better to screen than Alan Moore, so therefore his legacy and popularity is bigger. There's an axe to grind there. There's animosity there, whether they like it or not. So I didn't mean my experiments with comics to be immediately taken up as something the whole industry should do. In other words, he didn't think everybody should go dark. Couldn't agree more with that. I think his work and Frank Miller's work are Elseworld type stuff and should not have transformed the industry as much as it did. But there were positives as well as some negatives. When I was doing things like Watchmen, I was not saying that dark psychopathic characters are really cool, but that does seem to be the message that the industry took for the next 20 years. Okay, sort of. I mean, sort of. Not all characters, but I mean, it redefined the anti-hero for that time frame. So, um, yeah. Fantasy these days seem to have been boiled down to a kind of J.R.R. Tolkien, George R.R. Martin, World of Warriors and Dragons. For some reason, dwarves. The fantasy books that inspire me are things like Mervyn Peake's Golmengas trilogy, which is about real world in some ways, the changing nature of British society. Fantasy has no restrictions whatsoever, so it's a bit lame to be constantly hitting the same notes on the piano. Let's have fantastic visions that nobody else has seen before and lay off people of restricted height for a change. So it's just like this weird, judgy, preachy nonsense from Moore, who virtue signals this little penance of money, royalties that will now go to Black Lives Matter. So now he can feel like the good white guy. He can placate to his white guilt, if you will, this British elitism that looks down the nose at fans. Oh, how dare we like you know, we're fans. So I don't know what he means by religious experience. I'm sure there may be some people who behave inappropriately that, but I mean, fans are fans. They're excited to see people. And Alan Moore just he just can't like the world, in my opinion. He's just kind of a grouchy, stodgy guy, and it's really quite a shame because he couldn't quite find some joy and happiness in the success that he was able to garner, in my opinion. I never felt that. I never felt like he was able to find joy and happiness in life. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping he leads a nice, pleasant day to day life and can relish the fact that he was able to change the industry, leave a footprint that will leave a mark forever. So I want to juxtapose that with Bill Willingham. You see in the comments and such. Um, Bill went public as well the last couple weeks about his separation, if you will, um, from DC Comics. Quote, fired DC Comics, which I think is not exactly the term, but yeah, that's what the headline will go with. We're going Bleedy Cool. I don't go over there often, but that's what I'm doing, right? Let's go Rich Johnston again. So he's talking about fables, talking about tons and tons of issues. Fables is actually a great, great story, by the way, especially the first one. That Animal Farm storyline is freaking fantastic, just incredible. So he took to Twitter. Says in answer so far to many requests, I'm tempted to explain the delays in the issue of Fables of Black Forest since DC refuses to do so. Short version: I handed in every script more than 2 years ago, and for multiple reasons, haven't worked with or for DC since. I fired them. So they've asked for more information. So there's different things that have kind of come into light here. It goes into that. Um, Not a lot of sort of like details first emerged from Bill. And I thought that was interesting. Well, wait, I don't understand what's going on. Um, and long story short is Bill has been on the outs because he um, never really knew like how to get around um, the situation with his personal politics and lean. I don't even know that Bill was vocal. I've never really got this sense that he's sort of like this chest pounding conservative. And I just a dude that just wanted to do his own thing, but he doesn't fit the narrative, right? He's just so he put out this press release, this Substack, if you will, and basically sends fables into the public domain. Okay, and he talks about why he does this. So he talks about his creator on contract. It was run by honest men and women of integrity who, for the most part, interpreted the details of that agreement fairly and above board. But then later, he talks about how at one time, Fables were in good hands, but virtue attrition, employee replacement, Fables properties has fallen into bad hands. This doesn't surprise anybody, to be honest. One of the biggest complaints that I have with the comic book industry is not, I'm not even going to get into the weeds with the creative teams and the people they hire. It's at the corporate level. What do we expect corporations to do? They can't get out of their own way. They're going to have too many committees. They're always thinking there's another customer they can get. There's they're believing all these different reports and studies and things like that. But then they're also dealing with like the agenda people and the business side. So they're dealing with like the ESG people and things like that. So something like what Bill's doing is so unorthodox, right? That he's this old school guy who owns all the rights to his stuff. So they don't even get a cut of the money as much as they would want to. So I'm assuming that's part of the problem. And he goes on to say, since I can't afford to sue DC, force them to live up to the letter and the spirit of our long term agreements, since even winning such a suit would take a ridiculous amount of money out of my pocket and years of my life. I'm 67 years old, don't have the years to spare. I've decided to take a different approach and fight them in a different arena, inspired by the principles of asymmetric warfare. One thing our contract lawyers can't contest for interpretation of their own benefit. I'm the sole owner, and I sell it or give it away to whoever I want. So, what's he do? He chooses to give it to everyone. So, what he's going to do is radically change ownership so that it goes into the public domain. Now, on the surface, some of you might be excited about that. But it is different than what we saw with Alan Moore. Alan Moore is like, listen, I don't want this film money, this dirty money that I don't like or whatever, this penance compared to his other money. It's not like he's crying poor. He virtue signals to Black Lives Matter. Here we have Bill Willingham. He says, no. We're going to just circumvent the entire corporate structure that has been cheating me, lying to me, stringing me along for 2 years, that kind of thing. So Fables has been my baby for like 20 years. It's time to let it go. This is the first test of this process. If it works, I see no legal reason why it won't. Look for the other properties to follow in the future. Since DC, any other corporate entity doesn't actually own the property, they don't get a say in this decision. Well, expect that to go to court, folks. Expect that to go to court. And then he goes through the exhaustive list of things that are going on, changes that they want to make to stories, things like that. It's like, oh, and then it's like forgetting to ask his opinion on different things, whether it be formatting, new collections. Like, oh yeah. We didn't mean to overlook you. It just fell through the crack. It just fell through the cracks. Like they're late on reporting royalty money and sending out checks and that kind of thing. And since he talks about like since Dan DiDio left and things like that, basically we're in the middle of basically this corporate nonsense. And then he really gets into what I think is very fast. I didn't know all of this stuff. Very fast. Some of you are going to be more familiar with Fables because of this telltale game, right? They wanted to radically alter the character, settings, history, and premise of the story. I've seen the script. They tried to hide from me for a couple years. They don't want me to own nor do they owe me any money for licensing Fables rights to third parties, since such a license wasn't anticipated in the original publishing agreement. Okay. So it just kind of keeps going. What do they do now? He talks about the different things that he's done, trying to work with them, different things like that, the contracts. He's talking about how he's not breaking contract. He's not doing anything. He's not publishing Fables through anyone. He's not authorizing a Fables movie. He's not licensing Fables toys or lunch boxes or anything like that. And they still have to pay for the books they publish. I'm not giving up on the other money they owe, right? It is very interesting that you can now start doing your own thing, but I don't know. It's very interesting. I would expect he cites Mark Buckingham to do his own version of Fables, which he hopes he does. I really do hope so. There's an email here. I'm going to reach out to Bill because I really would love to have Bill on um, and see if we could, talk with Bill. Bill would be great to talk to, in my opinion. Big fan of fables, big fan of just that concept. Now, with that said, I wanted to juxtapose that with an article that is like the nightmarish side of that. And um this is what you have to look at. This you have to understand there's not always going to be only the positive side of these kind of stories, right? So this is Mary Sue. Mary Sue, far left, far crazy left. Okay. Is Fables actually in public domain? And can we save it from Bill Willingham's iffy politics? Notice that. Teresa Giacino, the iffy politics. Yes. So he talks about what we kind of just, did a high view read through, whatever. And then it says, um, Bill Willingham talks about the limitations. Like he talks about what he's allowed to do, whatever. The new, uh, what basically kind of how things are sort of in flux, right? The DC lawyers are going to come into play, that kind of thing. So, um, all that kind of rights battle is going to be there. So, um, several questions. This doesn't include the right to reprint published books, and if you come out with your own Fables books, others can't reprint them. Create your own is a new order of things. So Bill's trying to clarify this. They've got lawyers. I'm sure this will going to be kind of be fought out. This will be very, very interesting to see how this will play out. Right? Okay. Um, I think what'll be interesting is this is where I want to land here. Former TMS writer Princess Weeks wrote a piece called "What is the Line Between Author and Character," where she mentions seeing Willingham's politics, all her fables, once she learned what his politics were. Now, I always find that very interesting. And I want to make sure that you see this kind of thing in different articles or reports. And if you find one that's interesting like that, send it to me. Let me cover it because notice what it usually happens is they find out you don't agree with them and then they go find dirt on you. It's not as though they actually had issue with Bill Willing. Fables is not new. Fables has been around, right? So it's not as though anyone along the way, that I'm well aware of since the 2000s, which I'm when I become more familiar with Fables, uh, any of these issues. Now, again, are there politics and their leanings and messaging? And yeah, there is. I mean, the first storyline is called Animal Farm for a reason. There's very, very strong messaging in some of these different things about social structure and dynamics. Um, see how they see it though? They see it as quote his problematic politics. So in other words, they want lefty versions of fables. That's what they want. They're Mary Sue. Original stories using Snow White and the Big Bad Wolf because they already can. Yeah, they can. Those are stories like a lot of fables could be done in your own version and not touch Bill's stuff. So we'll see. But don't expect this to just be a win for people who agree with Bill Willingham. So if you agree with Bill Willingham, that's fine. I'm not trying to dog you or tell you what you should or shouldn't believe. I'm just letting you know that is sort of like uh, in some ways what is coming is some stuff. The people will be watching this very, very closely, and they will be very eager to uh, write their own version as well. So, all right, let me get into a couple reviews of things and more like catching up because and it's been a while since I've even talked about some of these books and stories, so it may be a minute for us to kind of get to where I need to go because we've got a little bit of catching up to do. So, this is Incredible Hulk. If you remember, Eric O'Sullivan is the one to turn me on to this. Philip Kennedy Johnson has kind of gained a lot of acclaim writing over on, I believe, Action Comics, which I haven't read, but he and Nick Klein took to the Hulk. And I really did kind of enjoy at least some of the superficial elements within the first film. I enjoyed the synopsis where they did a great job of catching us up with what Bruce is doing and how Bruce is put into the crosshairs with this girl. And you end up in this sort of like situation where, Bruce doesn't always know what's going on, and he ends up with this girl who's abusive home, that kind of thing, and she's on the run, and that's kind of how the story began. Now, issue two, I took issue with because we ended up having sort of like this, darker, strange type story in the background, and they're back and forth. But there's no Hulk in my Hulk book. Like there's a little bit of Hulk there, and it's the very last page before I have Hulk. So I was like, issue number two is kind of making me angry. I don't really have any Hulk in my Hulk book. Let me say this. Issue three redeemed itself. Issue three was a lot of fun. I actually had more fun. So this is called The Old Time Religion Part Two. You have sort of a continuation of this story with Hulk and this girl, and and lots of fights. And I will say this: I really enjoy this Hulk and little girl banter, even though I don't care for the girl that's the secret to everything, witchy little girl trope that male writers try to include these days. I don't quite understand why that's supposed to be so appealing, like this scowling, nasty, mean girl thing. Oh, how dare you call me weak, Hulk? Blah blah blah. F you, blah blah. Like that's not at all. That's not. There's nothing positive about that character. So when this happens and she falls, like something bad's happened to her, I'm kind of like, all right. So not the best way to make me care for this character, but Hulk is in action, and we have Hulk fighting, Hulk battle, Hulk stuff going on, fighting this creature, which I thought was great. I actually had a really good time with issue number three. Probably my favorite issue so far, like classic Hulk smash type stuff. Look at the scale, how small Hulk is compared to the creature that he's fighting. Loved it. Really had a good time with this. Then we get to issue number four, and we have Man Thing. So Man Thing kind of comes again. We're kind of like the story isn't as tight as I would like. We have a little bit of this weird backstory of something going on. I don't want to spoil that for you here. It's called Riddle of the Man Thing, Part One. So I want to jump ahead to them. The art's a little different in some places. They use a guest artist on this issue, Travel Foreman. So you can see how the characters here were drawn differently. And you can tell it's very digital. Like I really don't like shots like this. Like he has no real facial features. Like this is, you can tell it's just digital. He's very little details are put into this. I really don't like all that. Um, yeah, look at this. Look at this kid. Very generic details for everything. So anyway, she's looking for Banner now. You end up with this little backstory of something going on, and that's when Man Thing has arrived, and you had this sort of like back and forth thing with the Man Thing, and then ultimately the Hulk. So all of this was a lot of fun. It was fun to see Man Thing and Hulk interact together. I'm not even going to pretend that I've read enough Man Thing in 25 years, maybe. Golly, I can't even remember last time I've read some Man Thing comic books. Kind of made me want to. I enjoyed his little cameo bit part. He's probably one of the best parts of the Werewolf by Night little show that Disney Plus did. I kind of wish there was another. I don't know if there's one coming for this year or not, but I sure wish there was a Man Thing version or something like that. It would have been fun to flip it, and now it's about Man Thing, but now one night could be a cameo or Elsa Bloodstone or something like that. But it kind of makes me look forward to seeing another Hulk issue. Like what happens next. I enjoy this. I enjoyed how Man Thing is introduced, so I'm looking forward to the next part, so to speak. So a modern comic that I can enjoy. Would have been disappointed with issue number two, but again, they're writing for 2 issue, 4 issue. These are like 1 or 2 issue stories, so it's a little different, a little better than some of the other things. So I'm not going to complain as much as I quote normally would. I know. Who knew? Who knew that I could not complain as much? I know. Some of you are like, wait a minute, Pops. What do you mean you're liking something? You're not allowed to like things. I know. I know. So speaking of not liking things, this is Green Lantern, Dawn of DC. So let's go over to DC for a minute. And if you guys recall, I actually liked Dawn of DC, Green Lantern. I thought this was like a fun little ride. I was having a really good time with what Josh Adams had done. They had kind of done a great job of catching me up on what's going on and why it's going on. They have great shots of Hal as Jordan. So thought all of this is fine. It's called Nice Guys Finish First. We have a great little story here. If you remember, I hated the cover, but this cover was just god awful, terrible. And there's a Daniels variant cover I thought was like the primary cover, but they just do that to make money. Anyway, so all of this was fine. We kind of get like a little adventure story, but they interrupt my story because they went off on that little side journey where they did the terror story. So anyway, now we're going to have issue number 3, and we have Sinestro. Now, I don't quite get the gun thing we got going on here. So I was kind of like, well, what am I getting? So we're picking up a little bit of issue because his ring shuts off, he's losing power and he's falling, and you have some of that type of information. Look at the amount of variant covers that they sell. Like this is part of the problem with the thing, because you're trying to bribe retailers to get some of these rare books. I just can't stand it. So, all right. So, House Falling, you have I who did the art? Let me make sure I got the art right. I don't know how to say the artist's name. I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to butcher your name. Zermanico. Jeremy Adams' art's good. I called him Josh earlier. I meant Jeremy. Anyway, so he's falling. The ring comes on. This blurred cinematic feel is fine, but again, we're very digital with everything. This should have been a very cool shot. I really wish there was a whole lot more leaves and debris, almost like an impact tremor. Mushroom clouded up a little bit. Would have been a lot better in my opinion, but it wasn't awful. It wasn't awful. So, yeah. So then we cut back to the city, and you end up with some of the story before you end up with our introduction of where we're at with what Sinestro is, right? So, and Sinestro, of course, is there. He's being attacked, and he very effortlessly dealing with some things, making references to Legion of Doom, which I liked. I think that was pretty cool. And then we cut back over to the mission. So it's fine. I had a good time. Good time seeing like Man Shark and stuff, or Shark King and things. Like I'm having a good time just seeing and doing some different things, which are great. It was fine. I was having a good time with sort of the journey and all of that. I will say there are moments again that I wish it was not a digital book. It was a little bit more sort of like meat on the pen, like a little more intricacies and details and impact and things like that. Things just get lost. So it was set up to be this big fight scene, as you saw with the cover. Let's go back to that top. Yeah, guess what? This never happens. Yeah, never happens. We get all the book. We get to the end. You get that shot, and then you get to the end. You say, "Oh, I think you're looking for me." Yeah, next time, maybe. That's the scene. Go to a bar right here, and then nope, next time, and then another universe, another time. Then you have a flashback to a Guy Gardner story with John Stewart, and you have all this cool action. And this is the battle with this purple creature thing. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but I got to say this. I like this backstory. I think I really kind of would rather have some of this, to be honest, because it's at least look at all the action, but look how small it is. It just gets lost. The artist is called Montos, but some of Montos's work on these spirit creatures and things like that, the guardians and of all of this, is really good. Um, yeah, yeah, very very good stuff. It's just very short lived. It's just never. I don't know what I didn't like this art, this drawing of this thing right here. By the way, kind of looks rather sphincterous, so to speak. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of all in on the Green Lantern. Still good, hanging with Green Lantern. Now, I noticed though they're changing it, so it says continued in Green Lantern War Journal 1. So maybe I'm getting my wish that this story, this setup, will now go over to its own book, and it's worthy of such. I don't know. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I wouldn't mind. wouldn't mind seeing more of that art and that style and that detail flushed out onto something a lot bigger scale and a lot more detail and be able to spend some time on it. So, um, I've been kind of behind on a few books and some different things like that. You guys know I am all in on Gunslinger Spawn. So let me just catch you guys up again. Just real quickly, very high level stuff. Um, Gunslinger Spawn is probably consistently the most fun 90s book. Um, yeah, I'll get to what the flaw of the book is in a moment, but this is just the latest in this adventure. Again, 3 variant covers. Talk about that again. Brett Booth, again, we've talked about with Walkie that he might be leaving the book, but I think they'll find someone. And you have a little bit of some of the backstory that you get here. This was really cool because I didn't see the Taylor story, this backstory with Taylor coming to light here. Like we're getting some setup here for more detail and more of what's happening there with Javi through Taylor's nightmares. But we end up with their journey and their time together before he transforms. And then we have another cool representation of the powers, the power struggle of how he navigates in our world and things like that. And I'll say this, I just enjoy a 90s ride. I enjoy just action, blood, guts, fist fights, chaos, a lot of really good stuff. And it never stops. It never stops. It's always been delivering. Um it is, if I have to give a criticism for Gunslinger Spawn, it's just taking too long. It's we are now, first off, they changed the mask. They shouldn't have changed the mask. I don't like that. But that's more of the semantics. The bigger issue is now we're like 2 years into it. We're 24 issues into this thing, and he's trying to get back to Civil War, and we don't really have a lot of the backstory flushed out, and the dynamic of his purpose and what he's doing and why he's doing it. And he's trying to be sort of like almost too cheeky. You know what I mean? He's trying to be a little too smart for his own good. And McFarlane isn't always the best writer. His concepts and his design. Look at the execution of this design of what they were going for with whatever Taylor's dreaming about. It's just beautiful. It's well thought out. Obviously, the Hellraiser iconography is just incredible here. Um, Probably my month in, month out most fun 90s style reading book that you can get is still this book. I'm sure there are others. I'm going to try to catch up on a few more things, but this is one that I truly look forward to. Nearly month in, month out. It's one of the ones I'm looking forward to. And I got to be honest, I don't even really talk about it too, but you get these great photos in the back where he gets to meet people. This is Todd meeting people at San Diego Comic Con. Here's uh, Jonathan sketching. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff in the back, and things like that. So really enjoy that. Really enjoy a lot of what's going on at Image in that regard. Um, what what is really hard is to know how to navigate the mountainous number of books that are produced when the companies themselves will always reboot, restart, rechange. It's like you're just getting comfortable with the writer and the artist, and then it's stopped, and they got to start again. So I haven't really had a lot of fun, like getting into stuff because I feel like it just never lasts very long. If that makes sense, like it just you just feel like everything kind of comes and goes in some way, but it never ever uh, lasts, if you will. So uh, that's kind of where I'm at. It's been difficult trying to think about even doing reviews for comics lately. Personal stuff's been going on, different things that are happening. So you kind of get at least a little bit of a catch up of some stuff that's been in my brain lately and on my mind. So hopefully next time I'll have a little bit more for you guys and some things like that. So please bear with me. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning. I appreciate you so much. Enjoy your comic book day. Take care, everybody. Till next time, I am Pops.
My favorite quality about Pops is that he's incredibly honest. At least you always know where you stand with Pops. So I like that about him. He's not passive aggressive. He's not sneaky that way. He'll give it to you straight down both barrels.
Crunch. Hi, sweetie.